right. Thanks, everybody. Sorry for the inconvenience there. Every now and then it does that, or it just. So go ahead and refresh your screen. Just put the message on there. Just put it on there a few times so people see it. All right, so let's scroll back down. Sorry about that, folks. Every now and then it just seems like everything's going good, and then all of a sudden it's a snag or something. Either the internet slows down or computer slows down or what. All right, so let me go back. I think I was on, Tom S. So Tom S says, with my irons, I tend to slide my hips toward the target at the start of the downswing. I understand this is because I'm trying to shallow the club by bending my spine back instead of turning my arms to the right. However, my sense is that the root cause is the feeling I need to make a quick weight shift to start the downswing. Is there a drill to help with this? So it's hard to say exactly what you need to do without seeing your swing. What I'd recommend doing first is look at your swing on video. It sounds like you haven't really looked at your swing on video, so I would definitely do that to see, because feel isn't always real, right? So the camera, the camera's not going to lie most of the time. It's going to show you what's going on. So that's what I would look at first. Typically, when I see people sliding in the downswing, it's because they also slide in the backswing, right? So in the backswing, they'll tend to go like this, and then they really slide, because sliding in the backswing leads to sliding in the downswing. That's usually what I see. So if that is what you're doing, then I would really focus on turning the hip back, right, as you go up to the top. So that way, and the other reason why that can cause that issue that you're talking about, to try to slide and bend back to shallow out the club, is because when you slide in the backswing, usually your spine angle gets off, and then you feel like to shallow the club, you've got to slide and move forward to go like this. Whereas if I turn my hips, now I've got space here to get my elbow to work in to shallow the club. So if I turn my hips, now I can get my elbow to work in instead of being like this, where I'm going to want to go over the top. So most likely what's going on is you're sliding in your backswing. Instead of turning your hips this way and getting in a nice angled away position like this, you're sliding, probably getting vertical or leaning toward the target, and then that's going to lead to sliding in the downswing, falling away to get the club to work from the inside, or to work back on plane, or less over the top. So that's what I would see is going on. If that is the case, then I work through the stable fluid spine, get to where you're staying nice and angled away as you go up to the top. A good drill for this is just to exaggerate the opposite. Excuse me. So if you're going like this, you need to feel like you're going like this. Like that. This would be an exaggeration. It's telling me it's reconnecting again, even after I restarted my computer. So I'm sorry if it keeps doing that. Hopefully it doesn't keep doing it, but if it does, we may have to just stop for today. But it went away, so hopefully it doesn't do it anymore. But basically, try to feel like you're more angled away as you're going up to the top. Your hips, feel like your hips are going toward the target. Your chest is going kind of away from the target to get more angled away as you go up to the top. And that'll allow you to get to your lead side a little bit more easily instead of feeling like you have to slide. So Paul M says, I'm 69 years old and having trouble getting my speed up over 100 miles per hour consistently. I'm pretty good shape with some flexibility issues. What should I expect? Clay seems to do it so effortlessly. Well, Clay isn't 69 years old. That'd be part of it. As you get older, it's going to be difficult to swing fast. I mean, if you're swinging around 100 miles per hour at 69 years old, you're doing pretty darn good. I would say that is well above average. So your average amateur player who's in their 60s swings about 82.5 miles an hour, somewhere 82, 83 miles per hour. The best players in the world, so we're talking like Champions Tour players who are in their 60s, are swinging, I believe it's around I think it's around 102. I could be wrong about that, but it's around there. It's either 92 or 102, right? I can't remember exactly. But so even if it's 102, you're up the 60s too. You're near 70. So I would say, now that's not to say that you can't be 69 years old and swing 110 miles per hour. You absolutely can. I've asked a couple students who are in their 70s and swing 110 miles per hour. Have gotten up to 110 miles per hour. Consistently 105, 107, somewhere in that range. So basically what I say, people ask me, what's a reasonable expectation? What you can look at is, your average amateur is male for in their 60s is around 83 miles per hour. But most of the guys I talk to are going to be above that, right? So I don't think that's really a good one to shoot for. So what I like to say is wherever you started at, before you did the distance program, or if you haven't done the distance program, you need to. But I would expect somewhere between 10 and 13 miles per hour more. I think that's reasonable from wherever you're at now. If you haven't done the speed program, 10 to 13 miles per hour, because our average is about 12 to 13. So I think 10 to 13 is a reasonable expectation to be able to get to. And then once you get that initial 10 to 13 miles per hour, after you go through the program one time, if you go through the program again and try to push yourself a little bit, you're not going to get another 10 to 13 miles per hour. You'll be lucky to get 5, right? So it usually it cuts down quite a bit. And then every mile per hour, even if you go through it another time, is going to be, you may go through the whole program again and get 1 mile per hour. So that first 10 to 13 miles per hour, that's the easiest to get. It's really the easiest to get. But beyond that, you can expect it to be a lot harder to make gains. So I'm not sure where you started at, but wherever you started at, let's say if you started at 90 miles per hour and you're around 100, you're in a good spot. But it's going to be tough to get to 105. And then after that, it's going to be tough to get to 106, 107, 108. It's going to take a lot of hard work. So understand that the amount of time that's going to take, that's the thing about speed training is if you haven't done any speed training and you go through it the first time, you go through our speed training protocol the first time, the 20-minute distance fix, that first 10 to 13 miles per hour, a lot of times it's so easy. And a lot of times you do the quick start and you'll gain 8 miles per hour, just like that. It just happens because you're a clean slate, right? So it gets you pretty excited, and you should be. I recommend, it's great to get excited about that. But what we have to understand is that after you go through the program one time, we can't expect to get another 10 to. It's going to be at least, or at the most, you're probably going to be able to get half of what you got the first time if you go through it again. So let's say you gain 10 miles per hour, you take a week off, then you go through the speed training again, another 3 weeks. I think you'd be lucky to get another 5 miles per hour. Most likely, you're probably going to get another 2 or 3 miles per hour. And then if you go through it again, you may get 1 mile per hour every time you go through it, or maybe every couple times you go through it. Because every mile per hour to that, it just takes a lot of work. So me personally, like if I've done the speed training protocol. I haven't done it in a while, so it's possible I could maybe get a little bit more than what I think. But it takes, for me to gain 10 miles per hour going through that in the next 3 weeks, that would be asking a lot, because I've done it. Same thing for Clay. I've done it. So once you get to where you've done a lot of speed training, it gets harder and harder to make those gains. So I don't know how much you've done, but if you're from a clean slate, I would say 10 to 13 is good, is a good reasonable expectation, if you do the 20-minute distance fix. So Alan B says, "Hi, Quentin. I struggled to control the flight and run of the ball on chips from the rough just beyond the fringe of the green, particularly when on a downslope. Any tips that could assist?" Well, first of all, those shots are going to be tough to control the distance because it's hard to get the club on the golf ball cleanly. The way that I would generally play those chips is I'd use some loft. I'd use a lofted club from that close, unless you've got a lot of green to work with. You could use a little less loft, maybe like a pitching wedge or something like that. But in general, like a 56 or 54 to 60 degree, or even a little bit more than that, you want some loft to help you get the ball up out of there. And then the next thing would be, a normal chip. You're typically playing pretty close to the middle of your stance, just opening your body up a little bit, and then coming in really, really shallow. Well, if you do that out of the rough, the club's going to get caught up in the rough a little bit, and it's going to be hard to get the club on there cleanly. So what I would recommend versus, that would be a nice. Now, if the ball is sitting on top of the rough and it's a pretty clean lie, the ball's sitting up, you can just kind of pick it off the top, then you can hit it like a normal chip for the most part, right? Just understand we don't want to get too much under it, because if you hit it high on the face and get grass on the face and things like that, you're not going to get as good of a result, consistent results. But if it's sitting mostly on top of the grass, so you can get the club on there cleanly, the technique itself isn't going to change much, other than you kind of want to just hover the club to make sure you don't get underneath the ball too much. But if the ball is kind of sitting down in there, instead of having the ball more in the middle of your stance, I'd move it more a little bit off the back toe, more in the back of your stance. You have a ball here. So just to kind of show you, this would be like a normal chip setup. So normal chip setup, ball's kind of in the middle of my stance here. Weight is a little bit forward, hands a little bit forward, and then we're coming in nice and shallow. We're just kind of pivoting through, right? And we're keeping our hands pretty quiet. We're not really hinging our wrist any. It's just kind of pivoting back and through. And that's going to allow you to be very consistent. You can really control the low point and be able to kind of sweep the ball off the turf, and that's what you want. You're going to get a nice, clean click of the ball, and you're going to be able to really control that, with some practice. Like I said, in the rough, if we do that, that rough's going to be slowing the club down. There's going to be a lot of grass in between the club and the ball. There's just a lot of variables there. So play the ball a little bit further back in the stance, and now we're still pivoting the same, but instead now with the ball back in the stance. And what this does is it helps you come in a little bit more steeply into the golf ball, so that way you can make ball first contact and miss a lot of this grass. That's all you're really trying to do out of the rough, is getting the club on the golf ball a little bit more easily. And then the other thing that will make that easier is hinging the wrist a little bit. So in a normal chip, we kind of kept the wrist quiet, not a lot of wrist hinge at all. If it's a longer chip, there may be just a little bit back in here and through. But, if it's a short chip, basically almost no wrist hinge. But with this out of the rough, we may hinge the wrist a little bit. And what that does is that allows you to hit more down into the ball. So ball back in the stance a little bit more wrist hinge, and then kind of dropping the head on the ball. Let the loft do its job. Let it pop up out of there. Go practice that, and should help out your chipping around the greens out of the rough quite a bit. So William W. says, what is the best thought or technique to maintain spine angle in the swing? What I'd recommend doing is working on the stable fluid spine course. That's really the best thing that you can do. It just takes some time and some repetition to get used to that. But yeah, just do camera work, look at your swing on video, make sure that you're setting up angled away, going up to the top angled away, and adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. So what that means is if you look on video and you feel like you're like this, but the reality is you're like this, then you may need to feel like you're more like this, right? You may need to feel a lot different to get the desired result. So that's a lot of what golf is, just adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. So the right technique is the stable fluid spine course, working through the stable fluid spine course, looking at your swing on video to get that right spine angle throughout the swing, and putting in the reps to make it second nature. That's really what it takes. I wish I could tell you a magic secret that's going to make you do it automatically every single time, but it just doesn't exist. It takes time and repetition to change a movement. So work through the stable fluid spine course. To get to the course, click the house icon. That'll take you to the homepage. Scroll down on the homepage. You'll see a list of all the courses. It's going to be toward the top. Select the stable fluid spine and get started on the drills. So Louis V says, wouldn't swing a weighted training aid help to increase swing speed? And what are your thoughts on weighted golf clubs? I'm actually not a big fan of weighted golf clubs, clubs that are heavier. The reasoning is that it's kind of hard on your body. It's kind of hard on your joints, especially if you have joint issues or things like that. I just don't recommend it. The super speed golf, those are slightly weighted more. They're not a lot heavier. It's very, very slightly weighted more. It's not going to be super tough on your joints. So yeah, absolutely that can increase speed. But the main thing that helps you increase speed with that is not necessarily the weight of the club. It's more the just swinging as hard as you can, putting in 100% effort. So that's what's called neural adaptation, where you're swinging with 100% effort. When you do that, it basically your body adapts to it. It gets used to swinging harder, and it kind of becomes its new normal. So this is a part of our 20-minute distance fix program. It's one of the big keys to it, that we want you to be swinging with 100% effort on all the swings that you do in the 20-minute distance fix. So it's 20 swings. We don't want you to be overdoing it. It's again, because it is hard on you to swing it with 100% effort. So if you're new to speed training, you absolutely don't want to be overdoing it, which is why we just tell you 20 swings 3 days a week for 3 weeks. If you're new to it, that's about all you really want to do. Less is more in this situation. If you overdo it, it can be tough on you. So, I've done the speed training. So just tell you a little bit about my experience with neural adaptation. Initially I started out, I was 108 to 110. It took 10 swings. They were all in that range, 108 to 110. Went through the speed training. I got to where my fastest swing speed was 123 miles per hour. That was my max. That's what I got up to. So, 13 to 15 mile per hour increase. My playing speed, now that's my 100% effort. Everything I got swing is 123. My playing speed went up to 117, 118. My playing speed before was 108, 110. Went up to 117, 118. That 117, 118 swing felt just like my 108, 110 swing. It felt the same. Even though obviously it's a lot more, it felt the same due to neural adaptation. And I actually tried to swing 108, 110, and I couldn't do it. I swung, the first time I tried it, I swung 112, trying to swing really slow. So I tried to swing really slow, and it was still faster than what my aggressive swing was before, like my normal playing speed kind of swing. So that's how neural adaptation works. Your body gets kind of used to it, and eventually, the speed is not going to feel. It's not going to feel like you're swinging out of your shoes. It's going to feel like a normal aggressive swing because your body adapts to it. Give it a chance. Neural adaptation is part of that, but I don't like weighted clubs for two reasons. One, it takes away your feel a little bit. So when you swing a weighted club, it's just hard to feel the club. It just feels so heavy. And then the other thing is, I think it's hard on your joints. It's hard on your body to swing a weighted club that's too heavy. So I'm not a big fan of it, but a lot of people like to do it. But I'm not a big fan of it because I feel it takes away. I can't feel the club head as well afterwards. If you try it, if you take 3 clubs, and put them together and kind of swing them around, and then go back to one club, it's going to feel like that club is so light, and you can't really feel the club head very well, right? So I like to be able to kind of feel the club head. It's a big part of being able to control the club and things like that. So not a big fan of it, but some people do like it. But that's just what I think. And also, I just don't think it's good for you to swing really, really heavy clubs. So Donald L says, my ball striking has improved exponentially. However, halfway through the round, I seem to go back to the pass, out of the box, chicken wing, lose focus. What would you recommend to be able to get back in the game? So really, it just comes down to continuing to work on those pieces in your swing. This reminds me of a great quote from Tiger Woods, one of my favorite ones. He said, first, I understand what I need to do. Then it looks better. Then it feels better. Then it performs better in practice. Then on the course. And then finally in a tournament. So basically, you're somewhere where You're probably somewhere where you understand what you need to do. You have the chicken wing thing going on, and it's causing some issues with your contact and things like that. And then, so you understand what you need to do. Then you're getting it to look better in practice, and it's probably starting to perform pretty good in practice. But halfway through the round, it's starting to it's starting to deteriorate a little bit. You lose some focus. It's not fully ingrained with. So it's really just a matter of continuing to work through it and get to where it performs better on the course, and then getting to where it would perform better in a tournament, and so on and so forth. So that's really what it just comes down to, is just continuing to practice and get better and better, and try to get better with it every single day. And if you do that, it will start to perform better on the course as well. So Robert M says, hello Q, working hard to shaft lean and hands ahead of the strike. I've weakened my grip, and it feels like I can get more of a flat or bowed wrist with a weaker grip. To get a flat wrist using a stronger grip, it seems that the face gets closed too much. Do you agree with that, or am I just making things up? Yeah, so if you use a stronger grip, right? So if I use a strong grip and then I bow the wrist, my club face is too close, right? So when I come into contact, it's going to look like my wrist is fairly flat with a square club face and forward shaft lean. If I have an extreme weak grip, so let's say I put the thumb even on this side a little bit, and I come into contact with a square club face and forward shaft lean, now my wrist looks a lot more bowed. So yeah, you got to have more, you have to bow the wrist more when you come into contact to get a square club face if you have a weak grip, and you have to do it less. The wrist is going to be mostly flat at contact if you have a strong grip. The problem is that a lot of people come into contact and they may have a weak grip, but they still look like this when they come into contact, right? So it's a matter of just getting in this impact position. And some people do better with a weak grip. Some people do better with a strong grip. You just have to find what works best for you. All right, so Drew D says, my wife frequently blocks shots to the right, especially with longer clubs. Her lead wrist looks flat at the top of her backswing, and she appears to be shifting her weight. She can still block the ball. Pausing at the top seems to help, but not consistently. I'm lost now how to advise her. Any recommendations? So what we have to understand is what causes a block, right? What's going on at impact that's making the ball. And when I define a block, and hopefully this is the same definition as you, for a right-handed golfer, I'm talking about the ball starting to the right and just going straight right. It doesn't have much curvature to it. It just goes straight to the right. So it's basically just like a push out to the right. That's what I would call a block. So what's happening at impact that's causing that? Well, in order to block a shot out to the right, one, the face has to be open, because the ball is always going to start mostly in the direction of the club face. All right, so that's number one. So we know that she's leaving the face open relative to the target. And then the other piece is that the path has also got to be in that direction. Because if there's not a lot of curvature on the shot, that means that our club face is in that direction, and then our path of the club is also in that direction. So it basically just means she's swinging the club out to the right, and her face is in direction with that. So what we want to do is we want to just change that. We want to get to where, instead of swinging out to the right with an open face, let's swing to the left with a closed face. So that's all I would try to do, is I would try to get her to swing to the left. Now, a way that you can do this is you can set up some obstacles to make this work. So if her fault is that she's swinging too much out to the right, with the open face, then let's set up some obstacles that would make it difficult to do that. So what you can do, and these are just a couple old head covers, right? A couple old head covers, putter covers I have here. You can use driver head covers, whatever. Old sleeve box from a sleeve of golf balls or something like that. Just something that won't damage your club. And I would set it to the left and behind the ball a little bit, and then to the right ahead of the ball a little bit. And what this will do is it will force you to get a path that works more out to in. And I would actually get her to hit some shots that are pulls, right? Really, the best way to fix any issue is to exaggerate the opposite. So what's the opposite of a block? That's a pull. So a pull would be an out to in path with a face that's in line with that path, but close to the target, right? So in the same direction. So what I would try to do is I would try to feel like you're more, the feeling, it would be that you're doing this. And I'd get to where she can hit some pulls. And then once she's starting to pull the ball, I would ease off of these. So I'd move these just a little bit to make it so she doesn't have to swing out to in. And she can swing a little bit out to in. Just get some little pulls out there. And once you get that, then I would just move these out of the way and have her have that same feeling and try to swing and try to get that ball to start straight. And once she does that, then I would start doing some variability training where I'm actually hitting draws and fades and straight shots to get a better control of this. So number one, try to get her to pull some shots. Set up some constraints to make that happen. Start to where it's really tight and you have to pull it a lot, and then ease off of that until you got a nice straight ball flight. Once you get that, then I would actually, you can even block and pull and then hit some shots straight and alternate between doing those, which will give you a better sense and awareness of this face and path relationship. So that way you can control it a lot better. So that way, because she can't just keep doing this forever. She can't just keep pulling it forever. If she does that, then it's just, you're replacing a problem with a new problem. So you want to always kind of keep that zeroed out to where it's nice and straight. And the way to do that would be to practice hitting shots to the right, to the left, straight. So it gives you, so that way you always know where zero is. So that's what I'd recommend doing. Exaggerate the opposite, then try to zero it in every now and then to make sure you don't get too far off. All right, so Robert M says, also Clay recommends an arced putting stroke for better control for short chip shots around the green because the stroke is similar to a putting stroke. Would the club use a similar arced path, not straight back and straight through? Yeah, your shoulders are, the club's on a lie angle. We're on an inclined plane, so it's going to be a slight arc. Yep, it's even more so with those clubs because it's more of an angle, right? The lie angle is flatter, whereas with a putter, you're more like this, and then with a chip, you're more like this. So you're even more on an arcing path. If you try to keep the club on a straight back and straight through, what will tend to happen is you'll tend to pull a lot of chips. So let the club kind of naturally go back, on its arc and back and through, and you'll be a lot more consistent and get your chips starting out straight. So Timothy Diaz says, is the swing with a hybrid and the driver the same? The mechanics of the swing are mostly the same. There'll be a couple differences. So the main thing is where you're striking the ball and how you're striking the golf ball. So with a hybrid, we're playing this off the turf. So the ball position is going to be the same as about any shot that's off the turf. So I like to play, and I think this is a good general rule for everybody, is about one ball ahead of the middle of the stance is a good place to play about any shot that's off the turf. With a hybrid, with the upper irons like hybrid and fairway woods, I might play it one ball forward of that, so two balls forward. That just allows you to come in a little bit more shallow, help you get the ball up in the air just a little bit more, adding just a little bit of loft. But for the most part, that's going to be a good spot for everybody. So that's going to be about right there. And I'm trying to hit my hybrid just like I'm trying to hit an iron. I'm trying to hit down on it slightly so that way I can get ball first contact. So that's really what it comes down to. But I'm still getting a good shoulder turn. My spine angles are still going to be what we want in the Top Speed Golf system. We still want to get lag. We still want to have a good compression line, albeit with a driver, your compression line might be a little bit more angled away. We'll talk about that in a minute. But for the most part, it's all the same. And I still want to be releasing that club out in front. Now for a driver, I'm going to play that ball a little bit more forward in my stance. The ball's going to be teed up. I'm going to be a little bit more angled away as I come into the golf ball to promote a more upward angle of attack, which is going to allow me to hit a high launch, low spin drive, which is going to be better for distance. So I'm hitting this ball a little bit more on the upswing or very level with the golf ball, and it's more forward in my stance, so I'm contacting it more up here. The club's released a little bit more by the time it's got to the golf ball. But for the most part, it is the same. It's really just dictated by your setup is going to make things a little bit different. So iron hybrid setup would be like this, slightly ahead of the middle of your stance. Driver setup's going to be probably a little bit wider. Ball's a little bit more forward, a little bit more angled away. You're hitting a little bit more up on the golf ball. That's really the only big difference there. All right, so Di P, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, but said, morning Q, club shallow in the move is difficult for me. Is it working if I shallow the club all the way during the takeaway, then downswing in the same plane? Thank you. So typically a shallow swing in the backswing promotes a steep swing in the downswing. Not always, but that's typically what's going to happen, because if I bring this club back and I shallow it, right, and I bring my hands back like this, and I'm shallowing the club, and then so the forces are kind of going like that, right? It's going to make me want to go like that, and which is going to make me come down steep. So typically that doesn't work. There are some players that do that. So like a Daniel Berger, if you watch his swing, he kind of brings the club up like this. He kind of shallows the club in the backswing and then shallows it in the downswing as well. So it's possible to be able to do that, but I haven't seen a single amateur that's been able to do that. Almost, I would say every single amateur player that I've ever worked with that shallows the club in the backswing, almost every single one of them comes down steep in the downswing. Almost every single one. So I don't recommend it. It's typically not going to be helpful to do that. Now, the squaring of the face, you can do that in the backswing. I've seen that be possible. So kind of like a Dustin Johnson, if he's going up to here, he's already kind of bowing that wrist as he's at the top of the swing. I've seen that work pretty well. But the shallowing of the club, just the way the forces work in the swing, is typically going to cause a steep downswing. Typically, it's better to do a steep backswing to promote a shallow downswing. So that'd be like a Matt Wolff. So Matt Wolff, if you watch him, I think this was his first season or second season on tour. He kind of brings this club up like this. The club's going outside the hands. He's very, very steep as he brings it up to the top. And then as he starts the downswing, because the way the direction of the forces are allowing him to shallow out this club, and it makes it a lot easier for him to shallow out the club. So a shallow backswing is typically going to lead to a steep downswing, but it doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen. The most important thing is to get it to be shallowing out, getting on plane early in the downswing. So that's what I'd be really focusing on. So JT says, how important is it to know your spin rate during practice rounds? Thank you. I mean, I would say it's not that important. I mean, I don't know my spin rate on every single shot. In general, if everything else is in order, if your ball flight is pretty good, your spin rate is probably pretty good. But typically a bad spin rate is going to be obvious because there's going to be other things in your swing that are bad. Like maybe you're hitting the ball way too high. Your spin rate's probably very high, right? I would say it's not really, really important. It's not one of the most important aspects. I would say, the most important aspects are going to be where you're striking on the club face, your face direction at impact, the path of your club at impact, and your ground contact. Those are really the four most important things, and you can add speed in there. Those would be the most important things that I'd be worrying about on the course. If those are all good, your spin rate's going to be good, right? If your face and path and strike and ground contact are good, most likely your spin rate's going to be in a pretty good place. So I'd be focusing on those things, and the spin rate will take care of itself. So Tony V says, hi Q, what is the angle of your trail wrist at impact? It really just depends, but it's going to be bent back some. It really just depends on how much forward shaft lean you have and how strong or weak your grip is. So if I have a very strong grip, you can see when I come into impact, my trail wrist is bent back. If I have a very weak grip, right, so very weak, I come into contact and I have some forward shaft lean, you see that my wrist is more bent back. So it really just depends. There's no set angle that somebody needs to be in. I would be focused on what the club is doing and then what your wrist needs to look like to get the club to be what you want it to be, to get the club in. So if this is a good impact position with the club, so if this is a good impact position right here, I'd be looking at, okay, when I put my hands on here, what does my wrist look like? That's what I'd be working on. What wrist position allows you to have the club in a good impact position? All right. Technical problem, waiting. Yep. So we got the questions after we started. All right. So Ed D says, hi Q, question about the specific angle of the straight line release. I measured 26 to 28 with an 8 iron. I know it's not 40.5 degrees, but I assume a short iron will be less than 40.5, right? No. The straight line release is going to be about the same with all the clubs. There may be very, very small variances, but it's not less for shorter clubs and more for longer clubs. You want to be around 45, 40 degrees with all of them. So, but I mean, 26 to 28 degrees isn't too bad. That's like on the very, very low end of what I would say is acceptable. We did have a few tour players that were in that range. Like Martin Keimer, for instance, he's a little bit of an early releaser. Justin Rose used to be, but isn't anymore. He compresses the ball a lot more now, which he rose to #1 player in the world doing that. So definitely helped him. But no, you want to be around 40.5 is a tour average, and that's where you want to be with all your clubs. That you're taking a full swing. So normal full swing stock shot. Now, if you're trying to hit a higher shot, yeah, sure. That's fine to release it a little bit earlier, because that's what you're going to need to add a little bit loft. But a normal stock shot that you see a tour player 45 degrees, but 26, 28 isn't bad. You're going to get, most of the time when we see releases that are poor, it's usually 10 degrees out in front, 5 degrees out in front, 15 degrees. You're in that 26 to 28 degree range, which is good. Could be improved, absolutely, but it's still pretty good. So Peter D says, do you have a good drill for correcting the weak right wedge shots? I find it difficult to shallow out and square the club face with shorter clubs. So if you're hitting it weak to the right, it means that you're just leaving the face open. So what I would do is I'd go up to the top, I'd pause, and I would turn this wrist down. So what that comes from is the lead wrist bowing and the trail wrist bending back like this. That's wrist extension. This is wrist flexion. And that's going to allow you to close the club face. So that way you don't hit the weak shot out to the right. The face gets closed. So that way you can get your hands forward, get some forward shaft lean, and square up the face. So here, pause, turn it down, and swing through and hit some little chip shots doing that. So just go really slow at first, up to the top, pause, change it, and swing through. Once you get comfortable with that and you hit a few good ones in a row, I would try to get 3 good ones in a row. Then what I would do is I just try to shorten that pause at the top a little bit. So I go up here, I just really try to shorten the pause and try to keep it where it's almost like one fluid motion. So you're going up here, changing it, and coming down. So shorten up that pause. Once you get 3 in a row doing that, then I would just try to add some fluidity to it, so you're not pausing at all. It's just a nice fluid swing where you're going up, you're changing it, you're turning it down, and you're getting that face squared up. So start out with the pause, shorten the pause, then try to add some fluidity to it by going up the top and changing that angle. So John T says, I developed golfer's elbow. It has lasted 90 days, and each time I play practice, it seems to make it worse. Wondering if you have any advice or swing issues that typically cause drill to avoid once recovered. So one, I'd recommend going to see your doctor about that. And what golfer's elbow is, and your definition, or what maybe your elbow may just hurt and you're playing golf, so you call it golfer's elbow. Sometimes that happens. But typically when people refer to when doctors or whatever refer to golfer's elbow, there's a difference between tennis elbow and golfer's elbow. Tennis elbow is the easy way to kind of remember that. It's typically the top part of your arm right here. has hair on it, right? So tennis balls are furry. You can kind of think if you're having pain right there, that's usually from tennis. And when tennis, you're going. Actually, it's usually here. In tennis, it's usually the outside of the arm that you're getting that. So from the backhand, right? So you're hitting your backhand, right? So you get that tennis elbow. Golfer's elbow is typically more on the inside of the elbow, right? So that's if you put your hand right here on your elbow and you bend it back, right? This part becomes soft and this part becomes firm, right? And if you go this way, this part becomes firm and this part is soft. So you're using these muscles right here. So typically that golfer's elbow on the inside of the arm, less hair. Golf balls have no hair, right? Are not furry. So that's typically from this motion, right? So that's that right there, the flipping motion. So if that's what's going on in your swing, you're most likely flipping. So I'd be working on the straight line release. And really, whenever you have that kind of pain, it usually some sort of tendonitis or something that's going on there, overuse, that sort of thing. So I'd recommend seeing your doctor about it to get it taken care of. But that's most likely from the flip in the swing. So that's going to be the straight line release, getting it to where that club's just releasing out here, and then it's rolling over instead of coming into contact and having to flip it at the last second to either square up the face or try to, not hit the ground. Or there's all kinds of reasons why people flip, but those are the two main ones. So I'd be working on the straight line release course to help with that. But I would get to where you're recovered first. I mean, if you're just playing a round of golf and it's been 3 months and every time you play it hurts, I would recommend seeing a doctor. It's not going to go away from practicing. That's the kind of thing that stinks about it, is that you need to practice to be able to get rid of it, but you probably can't practice right now because it's just going to make it so much worse. So I'd recommend taking a little bit of time off. So Gufron A says, can I close the club face during the takeaway in the backswing at the level waist and then do the lag? Yeah, absolutely. You can close the club face. What we have to understand is the only thing that matters is impact. All right. So if we turn the face down in the backswing, if I do that, that doesn't mean that I'm going to come into impact in a great position. So everything you do has to be to improve what's going on at impact. So if you're coming down, if you're at the top of the swing, your wrist is super cupped, the face is open, and you're having trouble coming into contact and getting the face squared up, then it may help you to kind of turn this face down a little bit as you go up to the top, have a flatter wrist at the top, and it may help you to get that club face square at impact. So we have to understand is just because you do this doesn't mean that's going to help there, but it could. It could help. So that's the end goal, is to get a better impact position. So yes, you can turn the handle or try to close the face in the backswing, but what you have to understand is it has to help you at impact. Just doing this, you can do this, but it doesn't mean it's going to help you. All right. So Charles E says, at driving range last week, hitting my 8-iron and 27-degree hybrid. Ball was starting out straight, but would draw or hook to the right and left-handed. Hit my 8-iron 135, 140. It would go that distance, but the 15 yards to the right. It would go that distance but be 15 yards to the right. So if you're hitting, so I can answer as many questions as possible, if you're hitting draws or hooks, that means your path is most likely too much inside out and you're closing the face. So if you're looking for a course to help you with that, I'd recommend working through our Never Hook Again course. That's going to get you to where you can clean that up. You can get the path more on plane and get that face more square at impact. So I'd recommend that Never Hook Again course. Click the house icon, and that's going to take you to the homepage. Scroll down the homepage. You'll see a list of all the courses. Then select the Never Hook Again course and get started on the drills. So Calvin Matthew R says, I have a reverse angioplasty replacement in reverse. Translation, my left shoulder joint was replaced with a plastic or and titanium ball to mimic shoulder movement. How will speed training 20-minute distance fix? How will speed training 20-minute distance fix? How should I modify the programs? That's going to be something you're going to need to talk to your doctor about. Unfortunately, I can't give you advice on that. I don't know what your shoulder is capable of. It's set up for normal shoulder movement. So I would be asking your doctor if you are able to do drills where you're trying to turn your shoulders as much as you can and swing as hard as you can. So that's what I'd recommend doing. I don't know of any modifications that would be there, but you're going to need to talk to your doctor. The program is built for fairly normal shoulder movement. There's not going to be any, no matter what your shoulder is doing, it's still going to help you to get in the positions that we talk about. So, but you can only do what you're physically capable of doing. So I would just talk to your doctor about it. So JT says, Q, right after I asked my question about ball spin, my computer crashed. Just go back on. Could you answer it again? Thank you. Short answer is no. I'd worry about strike location, face angle, club path, and ground contact. If those four are good, most likely that spin rate is going to take care of itself. So James C says, Clay recently had a video on hitting out of the sand bunker, especially in fluffy sand. He recommends opening the club face nearly 35 degrees, but he does not say anything about adjusting to aim to the left. Won't the flattened face cause the ball to land 35 degrees to the right of the target? So that's just something you're going to have to go out and work on. But basically, you are going to be aiming a little bit left. The ball is going to start mostly in the direction of the club face. So I would aim the face, right? So if that's square, if I have it open like that, now the face is pointed there, right? So I would start out by kind of aiming the face toward the target and see where the ball comes out, because it's usually going to be somewhere, it's going to be usually slightly left of that, depending on the swing direction you choose. So, because where the ball starts is a combination. It's mostly the face, but out of the bunker, and because you're using so much more loft, and out of the bunker because you're hitting the sand and the sand's actually taking the ball out. The swing direction also plays a role as well. So it's just something you're going to have to kind of go out and get the feel out. So I'd start out with the face directly pointed at the target and see where it comes out, and then adjust from there. So Louis V says, can you answer the question regarding weighted club? Again, issues with sight. Again, just to answer it really, really short and quick, I'm not a big fan of weighted clubs because I don't think it's good for your joints, and it also takes away your feel for the club. Some people like it, but I'm not a big fan of it. But also wanted to say, if you miss a question or something like that, these office hours are archived. So if you miss a question after the office hours are over, I archive it. And if you go to the office hours highlights page and scroll down, you'll see where all the archived office hours are. You can watch it again to see your question get answered. Thank you. Johnny A says, good morning, Q. I hope you are well today. Thanks, Johnny. I try to perform the move on every swing, and for months I've been successful, but I came into contact wrong the other day and hurt my left wrist pretty bad. I'm right-handed. Any ideas on what I did wrong? I would like to not do that again. I mean, it's hard to say exactly, Johnny. I wish I could help, but hopefully your wrist starts feeling better. You know, golf, play injury-free. If you play a lot of golf, you're going to get injured sometimes. And the wrists and the back are the most common. So if you talk to anybody who's played a lot of golf in their lifetime, they've had their fair share of injuries, and it's not from necessarily doing anything wrong. Every single tour player, there's not going to be, if you talk to any tour player, they've always had something go wrong where they've hurt their wrist or their back or something's happened. So there isn't a way that you can 100% prevent injury in golf. It's just our bodies aren't meant to swing a club repetitively over and over and over and over again. Things are gonna wear out, and that's just part of it. So that's what I would guess has happened, is just that you were probably doing things fine. It was just normal wear and tear, and that's just part of the game. So, but it'd be impossible to see if there's actually something in your swing that's really causing you to put yourself in that position. But odds are it's just normal wear and tear, and hopefully you feel better. And I would probably talk to your doctor about it for sure. So Nagesh R says, I have yellow flippy made by Skills. I'm not sure what that is. I start my downswing with rotation of left hip, so the triangle of arms goes for a ride, and then raise up like Tiger Woods, and do a skyscraper like Clay with the rise of the heel off the ground. And then I shout to myself, hip, and left hip digs into the lag position, happens automatically. My swing speed increased by 20 miles per hour. Problem is fatigue. So if you're doing speed training, I only recommend, especially if you're new to it, 20 swings, 100% effort, 3 days a week. And after you're going to build up your stamina as you go through that. So if you go through it a few times, you can add a little bit more and you won't get tired as much. But it sounds like you're on the right track. So Gufran says, can I close the club face during the takeaway? We already answered that. Marlon M says, you got cut off when you're talking about having a trigger to start the swing. Can you repeat? So basically what I was saying is that I don't recommend starting from a completely still position where you're still for a long time and then going. If you watch somebody hit shots who does that, they typically are not very consistent. So I recommend trying to stay kind of loose. Personally, what I like to do is I like to move my feet. I like to kind of pick up my feet and kind of put them back on the ground. That's basically what I like to do. I kind of hold the club off the ground, and I kind of visualize what I'm trying to do. And then once I'm ready, I stop with my feet, I place the club on the ground, and I go. I don't stay still for a long period of time over the ball, because that usually causes you to tense up. Some people have different triggers in the golf swing. Clay kind of does a little bit of a jolt forward, just a little bit, kind of a little bit of a forward press, and then he starts the swing. Some people, like Jason Duffner, it's waggles, right? He does a million waggles and then hits the ball. So it's really I would just try to kind of stay loose a little bit, but the longer you stand over the ball dead still, usually it's going to lead to tension and not very good swings. Doesn't mean you can't hit good shots. It's just not something I typically see. So Graham C says, I continually hit my clubs, woods, and irons out of the heel. Do you have any good drill for eliminating this? Thanks, Graham. So what I'd recommend doing, I know it may seem trivial, but try to hit the ball off the toe as much as you possibly can. Hit the ball off the toe. That's going to help you to, if you try to hit the ball off the toe, you need to adjust your feel to get the desired result. So hitting the ball off the toe is more than likely going to move that strike closer to the center of the face. If you still hit it off the heel, then exaggerate it even more. You may need to feel like you're missing the golf ball to make that happen. One thing that you can do, kind of just as a drill, if I grab a ball here, is you can place one ball just outside your other ball, so like an inch and a half outside your other ball. And if you hit this ball off the heel, you're going to hit both golf balls. So set up to this one with one just outside of it that would force you to hit the ball off the toe of this club. Then once you're able to do that, then try to do it without the ball there and do the same thing. Exaggerate it as much as you can. And what will likely happen is it'll likely move that strike closer to the center of the face. And then once you actually start hitting the ball off the toe consistently, then you can start easing off of that feeling a little bit. But you got to keep doing it until you actually start hitting the ball off the toe consistently. A big mistake that I see people make whenever I tell them this is that the first swing, they'll try to hit the ball off the toe, and then they'll hit it right in the center of the face. And then on the next swing, they hit it right in the heel. And I asked them, well, did you try to hit that one off the toe? And they're like, well, no. I was like, well, you got to keep doing that until you actually start hitting the ball off the toe, because you haven't zeroed yourself out yet. You got to keep doing it until you actually start hitting it off the toe. At that point, feel is pretty close to real, right? And then you can go back to hitting it off or trying to hit it off the center. So that would be my best recommendation there. All right. So sorry again for the technical difficulties. Hopefully we can get that figured out. But thanks for joining me today. We'll be back here tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thursday, so it's 3 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you all next time.